The economies of the North: gifts, tributes, and shell beads. Long before the first European ships touched American shores, the peoples of North America had already built rich and complex economies, systems not of coins or contracts, but of generosity, tribute, and sacred exchange. From the icy coasts of Alaska to the woodlands of the Great Lakes and the forests of the Atlantic, wealth had meaning far beyond possession. It was about prestige, obligation, and belonging. This is the story of the northern economies, a world where the power to give was greater than the power to own. Wealth in the North. The spirit of giving. For many native nations of North America, wealth was not stored in vaults or counted in silver. It was measured in how much you could give away. This idea lay at the heart of northern societies, especially along the Pacific Northwest coast, home to the Haida, Tlingit, Kwakiutl, and Coast Salish peoples. Here, chiefs did not prove their greatness by hoarding resources, but by distributing them. During grand ceremonies known as potlatches, leaders gathered their communities to feast, to celebrate, and to give food, blankets, copper plates, and carved artworks, sometimes even destroying wealth to show that generosity itself was power. The more you gave, the higher your status. The more you shared, the stronger your alliances. Wealth was social, not individual. The potlatch was more than an economic event. It was a social contract, an affirmation of hierarchy, kinship, and honor. Every gift required a future return, creating an endless cycle of exchange that kept society balanced. The cycle of tribute and redistribution. Farther inland, among the mound-building societies of the Mississippi Valley, such as Cahokia, Etowah, and later the Natchez, wealth took another form. Tribute. These chiefdoms, rising between 800 and 1400 CE, organized their economies around agricultural abundance. Farmers produced corn, beans, and squash, while artisans crafted shells, copper, and stone ornaments. At harvest, families and villages paid tribute to their rulers, often in the form of food or labor. The chiefs then redistributed these goods during rituals, ceremonies, or times of scarcity. This system of redistribution was both economic and divine. The ruler was believed to be the mediator between the people and the spiritual world. Tribute symbolized loyalty, and redistribution symbolized protection. Archaeological evidence from Cahokia, near present-day St. Louis, shows massive storage pits filled with grain and artifacts from distant lands, proof of a central authority managing surplus and trade. This wasn't capitalism or taxation as we know it. It was an economy of faith and responsibility, a sacred exchange between ruler and people, trade and diplomacy in the eastern woodlands. In the vast forests of the northeast, home to the Iroquois Confederacy, the Algonquin, and many others, economies were defined by diplomacy. Trade was intertwined with peace and politics. Nations exchanged furs, corn, copper, and tools, but they also exchanged something far more precious: trust. Out of these exchanges emerged one of the most iconic financial symbols of pre-Columbian North America, the wampum. Wampum were beads made from shells, purple and white, carefully carved and strung together into belts or necklaces. To the Iroquois and Algonquin peoples, wampum was not money in the European sense. It was a record of relationships. Each belt told a story, a treaty, an alliance, or an oath. The colors and patterns encoded meaning: white for peace, purple for solemn promises. When one nation gifted a wampum belt to another, it bound them in mutual respect and memory. Over time, Europeans misunderstood wampum as currency, but in truth, its value came not from scarcity, but from story. Every bead was a word, every belt a document of diplomacy. The web of northern trade connected every region, from the Atlantic coast to the Great Plains, and from the Arctic to the Gulf. The Cree, Ojibwe, and Dakota peoples traded furs, tools, and food through seasonal gatherings. In the Great Lakes, copper from ancient mines in Michigan traveled hundreds of miles to become jewelry and ceremonial gifts. In the north, Inuit and Dean groups exchanged seal oil, ivory, and meat with forest peoples for wood and stone. No single currency unified them. Instead, trust and reputation served as the guarantee of exchange. Traders were not anonymous. They were emissaries of their families and nations. Every meeting was a renewal of peace, not a transaction between strangers. In many of these networks, women played key roles, managing food distribution, crafting textiles, and preserving social balance through kinship ties. Their labor and care were invisible currencies that kept the economy alive. The ethics of wealth across the northern world, wealth carried moral weight. To give too little was shameful, to hoard was dishonorable, and to give beyond measure was the mark of greatness. Among the Pacific tribes, a chief's reputation could rise or fall based on his generosity at a potlatch. Among the Iroquois, social harmony depended on the fair redistribution of food and goods within the clan. Among the Mississippian chiefdoms, tribute was sacred duty, not coercion. These were not primitive economies, they were ethical systems, structured around community, spirituality, and reciprocity. They reveal a truth that modern finance often forgets, that the roots of economy are moral, not material. Reflection, the Northern legacy. When Europeans arrived, they were astonished to find societies that traded without coins, governed without kings, and gave without expectation of profit. Yet these systems had endured for centuries because they rested on something stronger than money: mutual trust. From the copper of the Great Lakes to the wampum of the Iroquois, from the grain of Cahokia to the feasts of the northwest coast, every act of exchange carried meaning. Each gift, each tribute, each bead was part of a living web of obligation and respect. In the economies of the North, to give was to live, and to remember that wealth, at its heart, was not about possession, but connection.